Hi there, my name is Rene Rubalcava, and I'm a software engineer at Esri. I work on our ARCGIS API for JavaScript team, and today we're going to be talking about building ARCGIS mapping apps with TypeScript. Now, the JavaScript team at Esri are huge TypeScript fans. Our entire code base has been rewritten in TypeScript over the past few years, so we've seen a lot of the benefits of this, including large refactors, ease of use, and the ability to use it across different teams. So let's dive right in. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here. What I've got over here is a very basic application that I've set up using Vite.js. That's not the important part. I just used it with the TypeScript template and already set up my TS config for me. I did add a couple of small things here, but for what we're going to go over, really the only thing important that I added was the experimental decorators, because we're going to be using the decorators from the ArcGIS API for JavaScript today. So the first thing I need before I actually get started is I'm going to need an API key. And you can get an API key by signing up for a free developer account at developers.arcgis.com. Now, once you have your developer key, you can go under the API keys tab on the dashboard and you go ahead and create a new key. And once you've done that, you'll see it listed over here. I'm going to go ahead and copy my API key from over here. So I'm going to say that const API key is going to be equal to my key. Okay, perfect. Now that's really all I need over here. I don't need anything else. Now you're probably going to want to get a little bit familiar with the ArcGIS API for JavaScript SDK, mainly just using the API reference to look at certain things. But we're not going to look too much at this. I just want to have it here for reference in case something comes up. So what I want to do here is that I like to keep the parts of my ArcGIS API for JavaScript application separate from everything else. So I'm not going to actually load any JavaScript API stuff in this main TS file. I have an app.ts file that I'm going to do all my work in. Now, the ArcGIS API for JavaScript has a class called Accessor. And I can see here that all its subclasses, it's a pretty large list. And that's because it's used for just about everything in the ArcGIS API for JavaScript. Now, the key thing that's used for is the ability to watch for property changes via a watch method. There's also watch helpers, watch utils you can use that can help you watch for these property changes as well. But this is mainly what we use it for. So we have a full guide here about working with properties, how to watch for properties, get, set properties, and everything. It's really very useful and pretty handy. So that's what we're going to be using today. Okay, so I'm going to import Accessor from ArcGIS core Accessor. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and export a default class app like so. But this class needs to extend Accessor. All right, perfect. Now, one other thing you need to do is that we actually, because of the way our Accessor works, you're going to want to bring in a special decorator to use with this class. So I'll import that. And I'm just going to import one item from here under ArcGIS core Accessor support decorators. And what I want to import is going to be the subclass decorator. I'm going to go and use that subclass decorator on top of my class and just give it a name. There we go. Now we're all set. Okay, so now I want to have some properties on my class. So I need to bring in another decorator that I can use called property. And the property decorator is what's going to let my accessor do all the watching. It basically tells the accessor, when I add this decorator to a property, I want to watch for changes. So one thing I want to watch for is I'm going to have a property, and I'm going to use an API key here. And this is going to be a string. I'll have another property for the view. This could be the map view. I'm going to bring in a map application. And the map view is just a class in the ArcGIS API for JavaScript that draws the map and the data for you. So I want to have that reference in here. Ooh, I need to import that as well up here before I forget. All right, let's keep all these imports separate. So import map view from ArcGIS core views map view. There we go. So it's going to be a view, and it's going to be a type map view. All right, perfect. I might also want to let my class, my application class, let anything else that uses it know that it's been loaded, right? That things are ready to go. So we're going to have a property called loaded. Actually, I'm going to make it read only. So I'm going to do a get loaded. This will be a Boolean property. And we're going to go ahead and return this.view and the view on the map has a property called ready. So if that's ready, then this is going to be ready. It's going to return that. That would be helpful, correct? Okay. And maybe when I use my application, I want to know the status of it. Maybe it's not loaded just yet, but maybe I just kind of want to have a reference to the status. So I can have another property here. And we'll do a get status. And this will be a string. And we're just going to return that this dot loaded. If it's loaded, then it's going to be ready. And if it's not, then it's currently pending. We're not going to say loading because we don't know exactly what is happening. It could just be initialized and nothing's been set up yet. So it's pending for something to happen. Okay, so that's all we have there right now. So, all right, what else do we want to do? I'm going to actually want to have a constructor in here that's going to call a method that kind of kicks off everything, builds my map, creates my map view, adds a layer, and does some pretty cool stuff. So let's add a private methods down here. We're really just going to have one. And we'll have a private init method. And this init method, actually let's make this async because I might want to do some async stuff in here. So what we're going to do is that we actually need to set up the API key as part of our configuration. So I can import config from ArcGIS core config. And now I can go ahead and set up my API key here. API key is going to be equal to this API key. Perfect. Now what else do I want? There's going to be a few more things I want. I'm just going to go ahead and start adding all of these pieces in here just to give you an idea of what I'm looking for. Okay, so I'm going to import the map. This is the ArcGIS map. This is where I'm going to define the base map and add my layers to it. I'm going to bring in a feature layer, and this is actually going to let me draw some data on top of the map. A feature layer view. Now this feature layer view is kind of interesting. What the feature layer view is that the map view will create a feature layer view that's in charge of drawing the feature layer. Now it's going to have all the data client side, meaning that I could do some cool client side stuff with that. And we're not going to do too much with this today, but I just want to show what the capabilities are that are there for you to take advantage of. And I'm going to bring in one of these helpers I talked about from this watch utils. And I just need to know when something's going to happen one time, right? I can also say when defined once. There's one for that. But we'll just stick with when once. It's pretty simple to use. And I'll show that in a minute. But inside this init method, this is where I'm going to want to do some pretty interesting stuff. First of all, I'm going to create my map. I'm going to say map is equal to new ArcGIS map. And I need to pass some properties in here. And I want to say that the base map is going to be ArcGIS topographic. Now, if I want to see what the options are, I can go to the API reference, go to the map, go to properties, and then look at base map. It's going to give me all these different strings that I could use. We might change this as we go along, but I'll just stick with topographic for now. Perfect. I want to say that the view then is going to be equal to new map view. And that's going to have a container. This is going to point to the DOM ID of an element on my page. And I just happen to know that there's one called view div that I've already set up. I'm going to pass my map. I need to define the center of my view, like where on the world am I going to show that. So I'm going to say, let's go with negative 85.05 and 33.1255, like so. Yeah, that works. Okay, let's zoom in to a level of 5. Perfect. Okay, now how do I actually kick this off now? Right, so I need to actually call this init method. So that means I need a constructor. So I can create myself a constructor up over here. And the constructor is going to pass some props. Now, I need to type these props. So how can I do this? I really just want to pass the API key along to this. But in the future, I might want to add more properties to this class and maybe expose those in the constructor properties as well. So one thing I could do is I can just say I'm going to use pick, which is a TypeScript helper. And I'll pick the app. And I'm going to say API key. There we go. And of course, it's complaining because I have to call super and pass the props. And now what I want to do is I want to say when once, and I'm going to say this, and I want to watch for the API key to be updated. So when the API key is provided, whether it's done in the props or if someone updates the API key property of the class later on, then I will know when that happens and I'll kick off the init call. So that's when I'm going to call the init method, and I want to bind it to this because I'm accessing this inside the init method as well down here, right? I'm calling this .api key, this .view, and so on and so forth. So, okay, let's save that for now. So now in the main file, how do I use this now? So in the main file, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import app from app. And I'll just say const app is going to be equal to a new app. And at this point, I can go ahead, I can pass the API key directly in the constructor for my class. As you can see, TypeScript picked that up, right? It knows I'm expecting to get an API key in here, which is nice. Now I also want to maybe watch for that loaded property. So I can watch for loaded. And it has a callback I can pass. And in that callback, I'm just going to say that the app is loaded. Perfect. Okay, let's go and run this now and see what we have. All right, there we go. There is our application up and running, and there's our app.loaded call that was made. So refresh that. Okay, so notice that it's been called twice, and that's because when it first gets called, so let's go and put the loaded here. The first time it's called, it's going to be false, and then it'll be true. So that's why we got those two. So I might want to check in here. There's also helpers in the watch utils to say when false once, when true once. I could use those as well, and that would prevent getting it called twice. I can just wait for true the first time. Okay, so I can always do something in here and say something like if loaded. Now I can say console.log app loaded, and it's only going to get called one time. Okay, nice. So I might not want to use this topographic one. Maybe I just want the dark gray map. Is always nice. Ooh, streets, night. No, let's go dark gray. You can have fun with this and check out all the different base maps that we have available for you to use. but we'll go ahead and stick with the dark gray for now. Okay, so now maybe I want to do something else. Maybe I want to add some layers or a layer at least to this particular map. So I got a feature layer in here that I might want to take advantage of. So let me go ahead and do that. And in order to do that, I need to define a couple of things. So I'm going to bring in some more classes I'm going to import. So here what I'm doing is I'm bringing in classes that are going to let me define what my layer is going to look like. I have a renderer, I have a marker symbol, and a size variable. And this size variable is just going to let me define the size of points on the map based on some information. So let's go ahead and see what that's going to end up looking like. Okay, here we go. So I defined a renderer. It's going to be a new simple renderer. It's going to have a symbol, simple marker symbol, and this will be the default, right? So this is where all of these different sizes are going to be based off. This particular color, the outline, this color, and so on and so forth. So these visual variables, which you can read more about in our documentation, but this is basically how you can define that the size based on data. So if we look at the total population based on poverty, right? So we're going to look at the population of poverty, and we're going to have a title in here, percent population poverty by county. And we're going to add some stops in here, right? So these stops basically say that in that field, if it has a value of 0.15, this is a size, this value, that's a size, this value, that's a size. And it's basically going to create like a ramp. It'll define what the sizes are in between these different values. It'll just kind of figure that out for you. So I don't want to get into any details with that. That could be like an entire session on just visualizations and how they work. So I definitely recommend you check out some of our guides and documentation if you want more information about that. But I just want to show you how to quickly set that up. Okay, so here's my layer. It's going to be a new feature layer. I have a URL here pointing to a service on the ARCGIS online platform. I'm giving it a title, and I'm going to define a pop-up template. Notice that it says it's going to autocast as a new pop-up template. There are parts of the API where you can pass objects, and under the hood we'll instantiate new classes on them based on what we're expecting that object to look like. So here I have a title, I've got some content. Don't worry about this syntax here. I'm basically just saying what this content's going to contain. I have field infos, basically telling the API what the fields should look like. I might want to format them a certain way, right? So I have a digit separator, let it know it's a number, so on and so forth. And now I need to add that to my map. So the map has a property called layers, and I'm going to pass that layer to that. And there we go. So now I have all this data drawn on my map here. I can click on these, and there's my pop-up template telling me that 1,936 of 6,802 people live below the poverty line for this particular location. And click on one of these ones over here, and I get more information about that. And I can go and scroll through all the different ones that are around the area that I clicked on. So now what I want to do is I want to add a legend here because when I first look at this, I don't know what the state is. So let's get a legend up in here. So I'm going to import legend from ArcGIS core widgets legend. And this will be pretty easy to set up here. So I've got my view. Now I can say that const legend will be equal to new legend. And all this really needs, for the most basic, is going to be the view. I don't need much else. Oops. So it's view, and then this dot view. There we go. And now I can say is that this dot view dot UI dot add legend, and we're going to put it in the bottom right. Basically what's happening here is that the map view that everything is drawn in has a UI container as part of it. You can see that it contains the zoom tools over here. There's some attribute data down here. This is all part of the UI, and you can add other pieces to it as well. So I've got my legend here telling me exactly what it is that I'm looking at. Now, let's say, for example, maybe my map is just a small portion of my page. Maybe there's some charts being used over here, or some other information that I want to display over here. So one thing I can do is, because all this data that we see on the map, it's already available in the browser. It's in the client now. Because one of the things you can do with the ArcGIS platform and the JavaScript API is you can query data from the services and do statistics and stuff. But since it's already on the client, why can't I do that on the client? Which is exactly what you can do. And that's where this feature layer view that I brought in earlier can help us. And I'll show you how you can do that right now. So what I want to do is I want to save any layer views that I might be interested in. I want to save them in a collection. So we have this class in the ArcGIS API for JavaScript called a collection. And it is kind of like an array. It basically is. But it's an array with a little bit of added sugar to it. There's events you can listen for when things change. You could convert this collection to a regular array, and you can type it and everything as well. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So I'm going to add a new property here, and we'll do it over here. I'll say at property. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to want to have a property by itself here. I'm going to have a private property, layer views, and layer views is going to be a collection of feature layer view, and we're going to say that's going to be equal to a new collection. So we're going to instantiate it right away. And then we're going to say down here is that we're going to have a read-only property, get layer views, which is going to be the same type as over here. So I can just copy paste. I can also create an alias for this, a type feature layer view collection is equal to this type, and use that. But I mean, it's just as long, probably the type feature layer view collection as is the type collection bracket feature layer view. That's just me though. So, okay, so, and this is pretty much just going to return this dot layer views, like so. Perfect. Okay, so now what I want to do, remember I said I made this an async method down here, this init method, asynchronous for a reason. Because what I want to do is I want to get the layer view for my layer. And that's going to be an asynchronous task. So I'm going to await for this dot view, and the map view has a method in it called when layer view. Basically, when the map view has created this layer view that's in charge of fetching the data and drawing the data and parsing everything and doing all of the real work, when that's available, return it to me. And you give it the layer that you're interested in. Now I'm just going to go ahead and add this to the layer views collection. Layer views dot add layer view, like so. All right, everything is still working over here. Perfect. So now what I want to do is that for my main TS over here, I'm going to go ahead and say that app, since I initialize the layer views right away on my application, I know it's going to be available to me. So it has an on method that listens for events, and I have some options here. So I have after add, after changes, after remove, before add, so on and so forth. I'll use after add, and there's different reasons you might want to use different events. Maybe you want to validate some data being added to the collection. It's really up to you. In my case, I only care about something after it's been added. And this returns an event. Now what I want to do here is I want to just, for now, let's console.log the event item. Perfect. Here we go. And here is the layer view. So this is going to be the feature layer view that we're interested in. And then what I can do is I can go ahead and say that up here, before I add it, maybe what I want to do is I want to wait for this layer view to do something. Well, okay, at first let's talk about kind of how layer views work, right? So they do all the work of fetching the data and drawing the data, and you need to know when they're done. To do that, there's a property there called updating. So when updating is false, that means it's done updating and all data is ready. So there's helpers for it, but to keep with the theme of not trying to add anything outside of this app file that is related to JavaScript API, I'll just do it manually in here. So I'm going to go and say that const layer view is going to be equal to event.item. And then I'll say layer view dot watch, and we're going to go ahead and watch for the updating property. Then we're going to say if not updating, right? So if it's false, then I want to do something. Now, what do I want to do? Well, I might want to go ahead and get some statistics off of this layer view. And I'll show you how to do that now. Okay, so in the SDK, there's a class called statistics definition. Okay, so basically what I could say is that I want to get my query. So I'm going to say that const query, oops, is going to be equal to the layer view dot layer dot create query. This is a shortcut just to get a query object from the source layer. It's basically if there was any kind of filters applied on the data set when it was added to the map, it's going to honor those filters as well. So then I need to create some statistics information here. So I'm going to say that const stats is going to be an object. And let's come over here and look again at what this renderer was doing. So let's give us an idea of what we're looking for. So population poverty, and let's get an average of that. So the on statistic field name, all right, did I spell that right? On statistic field is poverty, and let's just copy this real quick so I don't make it a little easier on me. We'll say out statistic field name is going to be equal to average poverty, and the statistic type is going to be equal to average. So that's what that object needs to look like. And I can say that query dot out statistics is going to be equal to an array that's going to have that stats object in there. All right, so now I'm getting an error here because it's not a new statistics definition. I could import it into this one here, or I can do the cardinal sin of as any. I should probably be importing it though and saying new statistics definition. But again, I'm trying to keep the API stuff out of this main TS file, right? But to ignore that, let's just go ahead and do it because I feel kind of bad using any here. So let's do import statistics. That's not plural. Definition. I cannot spell. Look at that. From, my bad. There we go. So now I can say new, and we'll just new up this object here. Get rid of that any. And there, now that works. Okay, so everything's happy now and good to go. So now what I can do is that we're going to go ahead and make this watch async just for fun. And now I can go ahead and say that const results, well, what it is a feature set. It's what we call it. It's going to come back from the layer view dot query features and pass that query. And I want to put an await here. And that feature set actually is an object. We come and look over here. Look in the documentation for feature set. Feature set has a property called features, and that's really all that I'm interested in. So I'm going to go ahead and pull features out of here. Now I'm going to say console.log features, and I'm really interested in the first result because I did a statistics query, and I'm interested in the attributes of that result. All right, so let's see what this is going to look like now. Updated, and there we go. So the average property for this view I'm looking at is 13,565 people. If I move it, 12,998, zoom in, 9,711, pan around, so on and so forth. So it's always going to update it to whatever is currently in my view. And that's how that is going to work. All right, and actually I can make sure it does it by also doing something like this. I can go ahead and say that the query.geometry. So now I can also add a geometry filter to this as well. Is going to be equal to app.view.extent. So the extent of my view. So now we're going to add that little bit in there. And that would handle any edge cases where maybe there are some points along the edge here that might be within the feature layer view, client-side data that we want to kind of eliminate. And there we go. So now I can take this statistic information and use this for something else map. Like I said, I can use it to maybe display some charts, maybe just display some other kind of information over here, or other interesting bits I might want to use statistical information for. And I can always do average, sum, standard deviation, really cool stuff like that. So that's it. We went ahead, we created a TypeScript application. I showed you how you can use the decorators from the ARCGIS API for JavaScript to extend the Accessor class that we use that enables you to do some pretty cool things like watching for property changes, be able to do these methods to kind of like hold the state inside your application, and really cool bits like that. So please give it a try. Have some fun with it. If you have any questions, please feel free to hit me up. You can find me on Twitter at ononet, or contact me any other way you feel like it. Thanks a lot. Have a good one.